Welcome to this ePaul Cloud webinar, which we called How Collaboration Contributes to the Professional Development of Teachers and Educational Leaders. So we'll be together for about an hour, and you will have the opportunity to ask questions during and after the webinar. Okay, so firstly we would like to introduce ourselves. We are three ePaul Cloud coordinators who are collaborating together to present our findings and suggestions about teacher and leader collaboration. My name is Rebecca Iliahu, and I am a teacher educator and one of the three Cloud 3 coordinators. And Cloud 3 is called Strategies to Improve Teaching and Learning Environments.
My name is Marcelo Giglio, and I am professor in a University of Applied Science and head of research projects at the University of Teacher Education Béthune in Biel, Switzerland. And I am also the Cloud 3 coordinator.
My name is Luce van Wessen. I'm an associate professor in leadership and education and one of the Cloud coordinations, Cloud group, Cloud 12 coordinators, which focuses on educational leadership.
So what's at the heart of our webinar today? It's all about the challenges surrounding collaboration in education. So why teachers and leaders find collaboration useful, and suggestions for ways in which teachers and educational leaders can get the most collaborating together. So we've got a little agenda. Welcome. Collaboration is a complex educational issue. We have two interactive polls. We're going to talk about theories of group creation methodology. We'll give some examples of collaboration, the challenges that it poses, and then hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes for questions.
Rebecca, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you speak into the microphone?
Microphone? Hold on. I will try again with my microphone and see if it works any better.
Please
is that better?
The micro.
Yes.
Yes. Mute my micro.
Echo,
yeah.
So maybe we...
Yeah.
Okay. We would like the webinar to be interactive. So please feel free to type questions into the question box for discussion, or raise your hand in Adobe if you have an urgent question. And if you'd like to continue discussions once the webinar is finished, do use the Twitter hashtag #ePaulClouds. So first of all, my colleague Luce van Wessen will explore some of the complex educational issues surrounding collaboration and the journey from independence to interdependence.
Hi. Schools are confronted with a bunch of complex issues and demands. Those complex educational issues can only be tackled if you collaborate. It's no longer fruitful to educational leaders to be the only people setting school or college strategy. You need to use all the knowledge and creativity which is in your organization and around it. If we want students to learn, we also need teachers and leaders to learn. You need to do this together. Judith Warren Little, who researched primary schools in California, distinguishes 4 different forms of collaboration, which differ in the ways that teachers depend on each other. Teachers can work on their own, on the left-hand side, but use collaboration to get ideas from each other, for example, by listening to stories told during the coffee break. Teachers can also ask each other for help and assistance. This is accepted if it concerns new teachers asking for help from more experienced teachers. It's also accepted if the culture is safe enough to asking another teacher for help if you are experiencing difficulties in your classroom. You need to feel psychologically safe to ask for help and know that asking for help would not be seen as a weakness but as a strength. Within schools with a collaborative ethos, other forms of collaboration can appear. where teachers mutually depend on one each other and feel a shared responsibility for the learning of all students. You can see that on the right-hand side. So they feel responsible for all students, not just their own. Teachers share materials and ideas and talk about their beliefs. They feel more supported by each other, in their task as well as socially or emotionally. The deepest form of collaboration is joint work. This can take different forms, such as analyzing data together, visiting each other's classrooms, and giving and receiving feedback, or designing sessions together, for example in a lesson study approach. I would like to thank you to think about this question during the webinar, and if you like you can put your comments in the chat box, or we can debate on it later on. We would like to think about the question, what forms of collaboration exist in your organization, and what forms would you like to exist in your organization, and why? If we're talking about deep collaboration, those were the last two forms of collaborations which little distinguishes. We know that research shows that the content and form of collaboration matters. Not all collaboration works and could contribute to student outcome and school improvement. It needs to be focused on students learning. Collaboration shouldn't just be focused on getting things done together, working as a team, but it should also be focused on how and why we get things done together. So deep collaboration is also about deep learning of teachers because it asks and develops an inquisitive habit of mind. In conclusion, deep collaboration doesn't only contribute to student learning and student outcomes, it also enhances school improvement by enlarging the school's professional capital, and it supports the professional development of teachers.
Yes, many thanks, dear Los. Hello again. Now I would like to discuss briefly some of the theories relating to collaboration as interthinking, intervision, or action learning, and professional learning communities, as well as looking at the case study of collaboration. Firstly, for this webinar, we have borrowed and adapted the concept of interthinking by Neil Mercer and Karen Littleton, who proposed interthinking as a process of exploring collaborative work and researching collaborative intellectual work. In our last Cloud3 invited session in April conference in Finland, we used interthinking roundtable discussion about collaborative lifelong learning. Following this thematic group meeting, leaders and members of the April thematic network group, including Rebecca, Los, and I, formed an interthinking group and collaborated together to write a journal article. You have the link in the chat, which included 3 international case studies from the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the UK. Part of this collaborative process focused on the concept of intervision or action learning, as described by McGill and Brockbank, which is a peer coaching activity that aims to develop professional expertise, helps colleagues gain insight into their work problems. Practitioners of intervision or action learning claim that it can bring a practical understanding of theory, as well as contributing toward a collaborative culture where people feel collectively responsible for their organization and its performance. We also considered the importance of creating professional learning communities or communities of practice explored by Etienne Wenger in 1998 in order for collaboration to be effective and so that teachers don't feel forced to collaborate, nor do they experience loss of autonomy. Collaboration only works when climate of openness as trust, as demonstrated in example that Rebecca will present soon. In this case, we studied different teacher-educators' action to improve assessment by a method called group creation and innovation. Each group comprised of 6 members with different educational professions and also institutional roles, different institutional roles. On the one hand, teacher educators, teacher mentor, and teachers student from a University of Teacher Education, as you can see in the slide. On the other hand, teacher advisors and teachers from the Ministry of Education, and us as researchers from the University of Teacher Education too. One of our questions was, how can we improve educational tools relating to assessment for learning, whilst taking into consideration different points of view from different educational practitioners? One of the problems with collaboration is that educational actors often don't have the time or space to reflect together, communicate, or also create the future. An interesting case study involved a dynamic method of creation, innovation, and co-diffusion between groups who work in primary school, teacher education, and educational research. The objective was to improve ways of thinking and acting on assessment for learning as part of the prescribed cross-curriculum competencies as creativity, reflection, collaboration, which form part of the new curricula of Switzerland. In French, is the Plan d'études romain, which apply to school pupils up to the age of 16. As researchers, in our first phase, we coordinated collaborative 90-minute sessions during which each group member could think about the shared current good practice of assessment for learning by portfolio. This one on the one hand, and about the future learning on the other hand. Second meetings focused on researchers presenting future vision of assessment for learning progression. Every 90 minutes in this second phase, 90-minute session was recorded, transcribed, and analyzed by the research. Finally, the third phase of this group creation and innovation method disseminated and discussed this vision of future learning as well as research results to other colleagues in another sessions and also in different conferences. Our findings identify challenges for collaboration between different educational institutions as school, minister, and University of Teacher Education, and between different educational roles or positions. For example, linking theory and practice isn't always easy for teachers, so coaching can scaffold their professional development. In fact, the ultimate goal is to enhance the assessment performance of teachers and teachers' trainees, as this also contributes to students' learning, especially where students can be helped to develop the capability to self-assessment or to assess their own learning.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me better now. Because I think my microphone wasn't quite plugged in, so apologies. I'm going to talk about different ways of collaborating effectively, and I thought I'd start off by giving an example of a collaboration between, it was the University of Applied Science, or an old polytechnic, and 8 different community colleges in the UK. The collaboration focused on improving this in-service part-time initial teacher education provision, which was offering professional qualifications for lecturers who teach students over 16 years of age, as well as adult and community education. And the challenge was to create an effective community of practice where people could trust each other sufficiently to exchange resources and ideas. As Luce mentioned earlier, Judith Warren Little enumerated such challenges in 1990 in her conceptualization of 4 different forms of collegiality, which she placed on a continuum depending on how effective they were for developing teacher autonomy. So firstly, in Little's view, storytelling, or teachers exchanging classroom experiences, can be positive or negative depending on the level of analysis employed. So if you just come in and say, I had a terrible session, but without explaining what happened in detail and analysing what it was, it's not very helpful. Secondly, aid and assistance can be helpful as long as teachers had built up relationships of trust, rather than just reacting only when they're questioned. Little's third category, which was sharing, could become a burden for some teachers who might feel that they'd given away their expertise, their resources, and that this was to their own detriment. Lastly, Little's category of joint work seemed to have the greatest potential, positive potential, as this might derive from teachers' sense of shared responsibility and collective action. However, teachers might feel that they have to collaborate in order to meet the demands of their work. For instance, Little found that the motivation to work together decreases when teachers perceive that success or satisfaction can be just as easily achieved alone, or even in competition with other teachers. In this example from the UK, a University of Applied Science had a leadership and management role for this in-service teacher training program. As program leader, I wanted to get people who didn't know each other or had not worked together before to collaborate and to avoid the potential pitfalls of collegiality. Face-to-face meetings were set up with a shared agenda, and I organised regular meetings with all the course leaders from each college and facilitated professional development workshops using cloud technology so that people could share their ideas, their resources, their draft modules, their draft assessment. So instead of being just left on your own to devise your own scheme of work, your own resources, your own tools, the teacher educators could raise issues, discuss methods, and share resources online. A problem shared became a problem halved. The UAS and colleges' investment in their lecturers' time resulted firstly in the development of very closely bound groups with high levels of trust in each other's professionalism. And secondly, their collaborative work had a positive impact on their teacher trainees and ultimately on these teacher trainees' own learners. For example, the emphasis of the course shifted towards inquiry learning and critical thinking within an ethical framework. This shows the kind of crucial role that universities of applied science can play in supporting the professional development of colleagues from different types of institutions who are also teaching higher education courses, as well as the richness and diversity of design ideas and resources which can be garnered from teachers who are not based in universities. I think next. That's it. When April Cloud 3 participants met together last November in Finland, their roundtable discussions focused on ways in which universities of applied sciences can encourage creative practice and educational research on collaborative competencies and lifelong learning. For schools, colleges and universities, it was felt generally that this would include peer review, observations in classrooms, which could perhaps take the form of a learning walk, where teachers allow colleagues to observe their classrooms on an informal and non-judgmental basis. Or they could use logs and vlogs. A vlog apparently is a blog in which postings are primarily in video form. Or they could use diaries, which capture important aspects of classroom practice. Regular informal meetings and networking were also examples, so that teachers share best practice across contexts and institutions. Because, for example, if you're in different subject areas, very often you can have sort of cross-pollination of ideas. And also, the important thing was lifelong career support through mentoring and coaching. But teacher collaboration is just a means to achieve an end. Space must be made for a research-based and scholarly approach in order to help define goals and shed light on outcomes and sustain visions of education. Otherwise, and this was strongly felt in Cloud 3, collaboration can become a contentless waste of time. So as we can see, there are many different ways of collaborating and many different reasons for doing so. I think my colleague Marcello put up a link to our article in the UAS journal, because there we do write about collaborative lifelong learning. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you collaborate in your own institution?
Yes, I think cooperative learning is very common in our institute. We always work together. We have a shared working group, and we develop together new materials for our students. So I think that is, that's quite common in our situation. And I'm very fond of professional learning communities in which we add the knowledge, and I see them more and more in our institutes where we cooperate with together. We see a lot of institutes who work with professional learning communities, and in that communities they add information, they add knowledge, they ask each other questions, but they give feedback as well, because the people in that communities are equal and they can give feedback, so they are high level of cooperation. So that is what I'm very fond of, and I'm guiding some of these professional organizations. Yeah.
Do you think those organizations could have managed without your guidance?
I think so. I think they are more and more. Maybe you have to make a kind of startup with it, and but more and more they can, if they know how to work with that, they can do it themselves. So they can be independent learners. We always create a professional learning community around our courses, our postgraduate courses, and I think the professionals in that groups are independent learners, and they want to learn. If they have a right target, they want to learn together, and they develop each other a lot. Yeah, I think it's not really necessary. Sorry?
Sorry to interrupt, just go ahead.
No, you can ask me, please.
I was wondering, those groups you were mentioning, those professional learning communities, are those people from the same organization, or are there different people from different organizations who are joining the professional learning community?
I have experience with both, with communities within their own working setting, and also people around the course from all over the Netherlands. They come to one course and they will work together. We make a digital community, and in combination with the meetings, the real life meetings, they can communicate together, and they are getting all into a flow in receiving a lot of energy from each other. Yeah. So it's not connected. The ones where I have experience with, it's not from one organization. It's all over. Sometimes all over the country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was asking because sometimes I'm wondering, isn't it easier to collaborate with persons who you don't work on a daily basis?
I can imagine, yeah, I can imagine. But if they know each other very well, they can give feedback more soon than if they don't know each other so well, because it's more honest feedback and more, as we say, on the skin of someone, because you are so close to each other. And if I think you have to find yourself in a team of a high level of giving feedback, wanting to grow, learning organization. I think that is necessary. Yeah.
And do you see a special role of working on such a safe environment as an advisor or someone relatively on the outside?
Yeah, I think you can support that by practicing, giving feedback and talking about. I always talk about the transactional annual analysis. I don't know if you know about that. That is, don't try to get higher than another one, but try to get in the same level. And if people can do that, that is one of my interventions always in groups like that. And if people can do that, then they have they are on the same level. They can give feedback on all the behavior, and it will not touch people so much, but they get starting to change their mindset and working together in the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I get under your skin, Jannie, but I'm asking because I'm curious about the interventions which might help people to collaborate in a more deeper form and also to feel safe about it. So that's why I was asking those questions.
Yeah, I think the interventions I always perform is telling about transactional analysis. That's one of the most important things, and also about communication. If you what is the possibility of sending positive or negative information in your body language, in your communication? If you start with a positive in a positive way, you win already half of the community, and I think that's really important to support self-esteem of people who are participating in that community. So if self-esteem is growing because of this, because of this cooperation, then it has a chance to survive.
And if I understand you correctly, and you'll correct me if I don't, your interventions are about giving each other the right sense of feedback to each other, and then you use intervention based on non-verbal communication theory and transactional analysis theory.
Yes, that is one of the main interventions, and of course I have other interventions. Sometimes they need to find a structure for intervention. But most of the time they know already. I have high level of professional acting people, and most of the time they know already the methods of intervention. But sometimes I have to give them some tools in that as well. Yeah. Is that right to add, Ms. Rebecca? Yeah.
Yes, thanks. It helps.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just curious, and I'm looking. I've got a lot of questions always in my head, so I'm looking for to get some answers, and you gave me some answers, so thank you.
I think it's very interesting, actually, what Lucy's question, which is how to create a climate of trust and mutual respect. I know that in colleges there's a lot of distrust and also resentment about the kind of staff development where you're forced to go in and be developed. And I always see collaboration as a sort of almost an antidote to that, because it builds up a community of practice and a learning community in a way that is less divisive, if you like. So I think Lucy's question is how do you create this climate of mutual respect, psychological safety, and how do you do it as a leader of a school, a college, or a university even? And I wondered what your feelings, what your thoughts were on that. If you're a school leader or a college leader, or a head of department or whatever it is, how do you do that?
Yes. One of the most important things is that people know that it's not because of yourself, what you say, but it is because of your behavior. And sometimes I have to draw a person. The person, you will not touch the person. What you say, Luz, I don't want to be on your skin or something like that. But it's not on your skin what you were telling. It's about the behavior. And if people know that is, I think it's really important. If they know something more, you can give feedback on the positive or the negative things when you know it will not hurt you yourself. You stay the same. It's not that I want to hurt you or I want to upgrade you as a person, but it is because of your behavior. I like to tell something or about what you said or something like that. And there's another thing that I think it's very important to know that if I want if I talk to people always who do not feel so well about themselves, they always blame other people. It's like external labeling, and that is very often in everything. We see it with students who do not feel so comfortable, or with colleagues who, when you give feedback, they will blame you for that. So it's like you get it back, and maybe that's what you mentioned, Ms. Rebecca. So I think can learn people not to label extern, but try to find out if I feel not happy with this, what's going on, what is my position in it. And if they can learn about that, I think it would be great. And I learn with a lot of students I work with that it is possible. Every time, maybe they have to learn about it, but every time they know something about how to look at themselves, and if they feel comfortable themselves in the end, they can accept feedback, they can accept cooperation.
Thank you very much. I think Ellen has raised her hand.
But
I'm not sure. Ellen?
Yeah, I did, but yeah, I just didn't find a right moment to interrupt, so I don't want to interrupt you, Jenny. If you'd like to explain a little more, I just want to give you the floor, but I wanted to say something in addition, so.
Please talk. I think it's necessary. Yeah, I'm happy.
I'm a school leader, but in the morning I had an interview or a chat with a school leader for my research, And I also was discussing like the climate of trust and the learning climate and how do you create that climate. And what came to the front in that interview and some other interviews in my research is that they mainly need to be there for their teachers when there are issues with parents or issues, I don't know, that they're there for one another and they feel like they are supported and backed by their school leader. And what they also stress in those interviews are like that they expect school leaders to be the ones who have a clear direction, have a clear vision, and that they, you know, that they live the vision and they are the ones who are advocating the vision actually. And so it gives them kind of a comfort that it just needs, that just can follow someone who is there for them and someone who is, the real leader. So that's what I just wanted to add to you, what you were explaining. So yeah, I don't know if I interrupted you, and if I did, I'm really sorry, but hope this is helpful as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nice to add on the ideas that Johnny was telling us, because if I understand you correctly, Janne, most of the things that Jörg told us are from a psychological point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, Ellen, you commented on it by an organizational point of view, also with some psychological points in it, but also an organizational point of view. And I think that's very interesting. And one of the things I'm searching for is, well, what can we do on the organizational level? What can we do on the group level? And what can we do on the individual level? What kind of interventions are helpful for people to trust each other, not only to give feedback, but also to use different forms of collaboration so that we can collectively develop our educational system as a whole, perhaps even. So that's that, and I've forgotten the last, so organization, group level, and individual level, but also the inter-organizational level, because one of the things that I find interesting in both Rebecca's and Marcelo's talk is that you focused on inter-organizational collaboration, which is a different kind of setting than within organizational learning and collaboration. So it's very complex.
Very, very complex. If I can, the expression collaborative work or collaborative learning different is we have different situations. Interaction is all time, but sometimes it's cooperation of different type of work. Like collaborate is the labor together, and if we take the work studied by Moran and John Steiner, for example, we have a different identity and motivation in three characteristics of collaboration in creative example, on to think or to acting to the future or a project to collaborate, not only to share the work or to share knowledge, but to work in a project. You have a complementarity tension between vulnerability, as Gianni talked, vulnerability and security, and also we have the emergence as a product, as process, a product by different roles, different working methods, and different levels of commitment. Because the commitment can be very different between one others. I think, for example, in our case study, when you have a creative project, between the current good practice and for the future practice, the collaboration with different roles, different positions can be effective. That is very interesting. Also in the in one institution, I think, when I have a project with other colleagues, the collaboration is it's very positive, and we have more security when we have a collaboration about a consolidated work, because we have more vulnerability. Because we have different qualification, different titles, different position, different form of thinking or acting with the student, with parents, with the head. Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, I like Marcello, in your example. What was very interesting was this was in the collaboration was in answer really to new initiatives from the government and new curricula. And I know that in the UK, what has caused enormous stress and worry is the constant government change of curriculum or updating or new rules or whatever. And I think teachers feel quite overwhelmed by, having to answer all these different initiatives. And I thought what was so interesting in your example was that it was quite a supportive sort of, the idea was to support and help people, and that makes things less stressful. And I think that's one of the great benefits of collaboration when it works, when it works well. And I thought that it was very interesting what Yanni was saying about using transactional analysis, in other words, to see what is going on in a conversation, which seems to be okay, and then afterwards you think, what was that about? And using tools like that where you're thinking, was this person talking to me as though she was my father or mother? And was I responding as though I was a child? And actually what should have been happening was it should have been adult to adult. And I think sometimes when we're very stressed, because of all these new initiatives, real collaboration where there is a climate of trust takes that stress away, and you do get more adult to adult communication.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add on that, Rebecca, because one of the things during this conversation that became clear to me, that what triggers the collaboration, what makes it necessary to collaborate with each other, is it something external or something internal? And perhaps we can put that on a kind of dimension. Is it based on development, as Yanni is telling? It's important to be based on development, or is it based on accountability, which is a huge question in both the UK and in the Netherlands as well. So why would you collaborate if you only have to be taken accountable for the results of your own students, stressed about it, and don't feel supported by either the school leader or the head of department or even on a national level. So one of the things I think it would be interesting to find out what kind of processes take place during collaboration, and it would be interesting to take a more psychological point of view using transactional analysis or other theoretical frameworks to look at it. I don't know whether you're familiar with the work from Emmy Freeling. I'm collaborating with her on a new project, and we're trying to find out what are the group's process, what are the factors in the group which are enhancing collaboration as well. And that's on a group level, but it might be interesting to see what those dimensions are the same on an organizational, even on an inter-organizational level, because perhaps the processes might be the same. I don't know. I'm looking.
I think we're coming up towards the end of the webinar. So I was going to say, are there any other pressing questions? Because there are fewer of us, we've probably taken less time than we would. We were sort of thinking it would take about an hour, but as there are fewer of us, if I think one of the things that we're going to put up is we'll give you a link, obviously, but you have in the article, there is a whole list of references which I think you might find quite interesting, because there's not very interesting reading matter about collaboration there. So it's probably worth taking a look at the UAS journal article. Just to see that and see if there are other things that you're interested in. But are there any other questions or any other comments before we wrap up? Is there anything else that anybody would like to say?
No.
No, I think we've probably covered most of it. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for participating, and many thanks to Ellen and Yanni, and to Luz and Marcelo, and also to Laura from the EPRL office. And what we'll do is we will send around the link.
Yeah.
And I will go and get my train back to London now.
Good luck.